Good evening to all of you. My question tonight to you is how resilient are you? And the other question is also how resilient do you feel you are? So tonight's topic is about resilience because as we are ending the school year here in Ontario, there's a lot of people that are finding it difficult, looking for energy to be able to continue and complete this school year that ends in 4 weeks. So let's see if we can talk about that. But first, let's see if we have the sound for everybody. And we have the sound, so we will continue. So if you're new to this podcast, my name is Alain Faber. I've been teaching for more than 25 years, and I'm sharing some ideas and thoughts from what I encountered during the day. And the idea here is we want to become better learners or students. We want to become better teachers, better parents, better community um, groups, and we also want to become better leaders in our community. So let's see if we can talk about the resilience and how, if we see it as a process building, we can get better. Now, I know that some of you will say, well, it's May, it's June, we're tired. How can we become more resilient whereas we're already feeling tired and run down? Well, I do feel that every time we have a new idea or new habit, then it is possible to get better, even though sometimes we feel tired and we feel we've got nothing left. I believe in you. Let's see what will be the topic tonight. So, if you're new to my podcast, I always divide this podcast in three parts. The first part is about the learner's or the student's perspective. Second is always about the teacher's perspective, parent's perspective. And the third segment is about the leadership perspective, either in your community, your group, or as part of a team. So let's see. So the first part is about the student's perspective. Now, the whole idea of for students to be resilient at the end of a semester, for example, or at the end of a school year. The whole idea here is that we do feel that students are running out of steam, so that it means that they feel like they have less energy to do what they have to do. And I do feel that sometimes it's just the idea that spring is here. When spring is there, we have a lot of more energy. We go and play outside during the afternoon. We are more in the sun. Therefore, our body feels energized. And therefore, we need a bit more sleep. And since we're going to bed later sometimes, mornings are tough, so it's a bit tricky. So let's see how we can build some skills to be more resilient as a student, as a learner, in a classroom, as a trainee, in a training session. So my first thing here is to, first of all, understand what is the purpose of school. So for me, school is is a place where you can learn to build knowledge, but also not just build knowledge, but also build the processes so that you can learn better and be able to do more with the time you have and the resources you have. Now, let me give you an example. So if you are in science, for example, we have the inquiry process where we have a lab, have questions, and we want to find the answers of our question through hypothesis and data gathering. We also have the artistic, the creative process in arts. We have the writing process in the language classes. We also have different processes to answer mathematical problems. We also have problem solving skills if you're in tech. So the whole idea here is that as you are in school, yes, you're learning new topics and you're reading new books. You're learning new topics in science, in tech. You're trying new things. But the whole idea here is that at the same time, you're building your database of processes that you have available in your mind and in your heart. And let's see if I can give you an example. So, for example, if you are in the language class, you're in an English class, and so what are some of the topics you do in English? Well, you're going to read a few novels. You're going to be looking at some articles. You'll have a few debates. You'll write a few essays. Now, if I am in a grade 10, 11, or 12, reading a book gets easier and easier because you've read so many. Now, doing a debate gets easier when you're in grade 10, 11, and 12 because you've done a lot of debates based on what you've learned. So you've got the knowledge, but you also have learned how to put your ideas together. If you are writing an essay, by the time you're in grade 10, 11, and 12, you've written so many paragraphs leading to so many essays so that you have the process, the writing process to get you to write your essay. So by that time, it's fairly easy. Now, keep in mind that if you were to ask a grade 4 student to read a 500-page novel and write I don't know, like 1,000 or 1,200 word essay within a few days, they will start crying. And the reason for that is that at that point in grade 4, they have amazing skills and processes. However, it is for the level they are at. So every time you go from one year to another, grade 4 to 5, 5 to 6, grade 8 to 9, and then grade 10, 11, and 12, you are growing your tool bag uh, of skills to do what you have to do. And you do it better, you do it faster to do what you need to do. So if you're in science, that's the same thing. In science, we start with doing little labs, little activities with younger people. But by the time we get to high school, then the topics are more complex. The labs are more complex. The questions we want to are that we want to answer are more complex as well. But then you're being led to more complicated places, and that's important because by the time you finish high school, you need to know, is science what I want to do? And then it gets you ready for anything you want to do after that, either in the hands-on field, going in a tech, an apprenticeship program, going to college, or become an engineer. But you need to grow your skills in science to be able to do better science and bigger science. Same thing with arts. If you think of someone who's 5 years old doing a drawing compared to someone in grade 7 or 8, or compared to someone in grade 10, 11, or 12 that have done a uh, creative art classes, they are getting better all the time. Now, as a scientist, my drawings always look like flying cucumbers. That's how it is. I exaggerate a little bit, but still, my art skills are not the best when I try to make it specific. When I have my lessons in science, it's good and get better and get better and better because I always practice on the board, practice here when I do videos for this channel. So it is good. However, if you ask me to draw hands or facial expressions or specific details for an animals or a landscape, it is very hard for me. So the whole idea here for school is for students to learn to be better at doing processes, defining them so that the next time they do it, they are better. So in my grade 9 class right now, what we do is we've been together for 5 months. We've done probably 7 or 8 labs, several reports at the same time, some marked, some just for fun, some just to learn and discuss. But by the time we do this last evaluation right now, they've done so many of them that it is like, I call it the formality. We're doing a last lab. Doing the lab is a formality because they've done so many of them. Their questions are so much better. And what happens is that their results are better too. And when they will communicate with me the information, they'll be better. I always tell them, sometimes students at the end of a semester, they will just throw out all their notes. I always tell them, keep all the labs that you've done during a year, because when you start the following year, you're not starting from zero, but you're starting ahead of others. And I think that's quite good because that's a skill that you can build on the following year. So that's quite important. Because the reason why the processes are important is that if you are not getting better with the process of writing, the process of doing science or doing art or any of those activities, when things get hard, when you get tired, when there's stressors in your life, what happens is that if you don't have the process to help you, then you end up going into a survival mode. And when you go to survival mode, then you go to your old habits, and then it gets harder for you. And that's why if working with processes and getting better with them, even if you get tired, sometimes you don't feel like it, what happens is that you're used to do those activities, you get better, and therefore you can build and move forward, knowing that the day after it will be better, as we go along. So here, this is what I think the best way to define what school is. I know some people will say, well, school is just to create workers for a job in the future. It is true in many ways, keeping in mind that in order learning how to have processes allows you to be a better worker. But also, if you want to become an entrepreneur, you want to become a CEO, you want to be an athlete, if you get better at understanding processes and you know what process you need to do, then you'll get better as an entrepreneur, as an athlete, as an employee. So all of those are important because the more and more I read about business, and if you have a small business, that's great. But if you want to build your business, you want to scale your business, you need to automate some of the processes so that you can free sometimes to do other things. So there you go. In order to grow as a business, to scale, you need processes. So if you've learned them in school, it will allow you to be better. Now you have to be careful that you don't want to just know a process and do the process without thinking beyond what you're doing, because some people are very happy to do the process without thinking much beyond what they're doing. And that's great because that creates amazing people for the team and workers. But however, if you want to be more in the creative part, you want to be an entrepreneur, what you need to do sometimes is you need to know the process, but have a vision to see what can you do with the process beyond what you're doing right now. And that is how you grow. And that's my first segment about learners. So the second segment here is about teachers, parenting, and it's the whole idea that as a teacher, we also want to make sure that we build resilience as we are getting better in our career. So for me as a teacher, I always say, and I got the expression from a friend of mine who was an English teacher, and he always had his class that he called, what is it called again? It was the writer's craft. And he was talking about how writers get better at their craft the more they practice. It is the same thing for teachers. If you're a teacher, the more you practice, the more you learn about your craft, the better you become. Same thing with a parent. As a parent, you are there for your family, and therefore, the more you learn about parenting, the more you learn about the evolution of children, the better it is, and you become better at your craft of parenting, the same way as you get better at your craft of teaching. And it's quite important because if you are not growing your craft, that means that you are at this level and you're not going beyond that level. And it's great. There's some people that are amazing at doing one class, and then what happens is that they are doing the same class over and over again. They do similar activities. They're amazing at them. And then students appreciate that. That's amazing. For me, I tend to have a variety of courses all the time. So this semester, I teach 3 different courses. And what happens, it keeps me busy. However, in order to build resilience, because when you have 3 different courses, when you have to prepare 3 different type of activities, 3 different groups, sometimes different ages at the same time, it asks that you have a little bit more know-how in what you're doing. And the best way is to have the process to deal with that. So when I start a school year, I always have this idea of a process where often they call it, it's a backward design. So I look at a whole semester. I know what I'm going to do for each of the months. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do for each of the days, but I have a good understanding of what will happen. So I have a process in how to organize my thoughts for a whole semester, how I define my weeks. So we are using a learning management system where I outline my weekly plans. So as I do this, students know what we will do, but it's also helping me to organize my thoughts. Another process I have, for example, is to know that when I come to a class, I write on the board always the date, then I say good morning and good afternoon, and then I write down the activities we're going to do, including a break time. And the reason why I do that is that life is always busy. So what happened is that emails are happening, people want to talk to you, students, teachers, there's a whole bunch of different See, parties wanting your attention. However, when I write on the board what will be the plan, so the date, good morning or good afternoon, the plan for the first half of the class, I have a break, and I have the second half of the class. As soon as I write that, it's it's a way for me to outline what we're going to do, but it brings a clean slate in my mind. I put aside any other things that are not on that board. So I don't think about emails, don't think about what happened before, what I need to do after. I don't worry about anything except what will happen in that classroom. So that brings the idea that my students are the best, or what is the most important for me in that 75-minute block. So we have the first half of the class. There's a place for a break because I need a break. So students need breaks. They do appreciate it, but I do need one too. And then we go to the second half. As soon as the class ends, then we conclude the class, and oops, there's all these other things I have to do that comes to mind. And that's okay because I had 75 minutes where I could focus on my students. I don't even look at my phone with social media or videos or anything like this during class, because when I'm in class, that 75-minute block, it's always based on what's most important, and it is my students at that time. So for that, we need processes, because if you don't have processes to do as your semester, to do your weeks, your day, and organize how things go, what happens is that when there are some stressors that come to you, as I mentioned to you earlier about teaching, when stressors come your way, what happens is that you go back to your old habits, and then you go down to your old habits because you are more stressed. Being more stressed, you are going to a more survival mode, and going to survival mode gives you a chance to go back to your old habits, and then all processes fall apart. So the whole idea here is that I'm a bit tired. It's June. There have been long days, long weeks, long months. But what's saving me right now are the processes I have in place. So for the same way, when I come to class, I do my agenda, and at the same time, I set aside all the idea that I may be tired at the moment, knowing that I know what I have to do. It's enjoying the present with people I'm with. So there you go, and there you go. Other processes I have as a teacher is I always give time to work in class for what we have to do. So I started that a few years back. And this whole idea was how I was managing my time and students' time outside of the classroom. And since it's something I cannot control, I realized that giving homework was not the best way for students, because I was asking them to do work in my class and then expecting them to do work after school. And at the same time, as a human, as an adult, I do work hard during the day. Do I really want to have homework and work hard in evenings? Not at all. So it's the same for my students. So I've set up my classes where when students are coming in, they know what we're going to do. I expect them to participate. I expect them to work hard, to to help each other, to collaborate, to do labs if we have any of them, ask questions if they have them. And the reason for that is that I give them an opportunity to focus at that moment. And I tell them that if we work hard during the day, then there's no reason why we need to have homework. And it has worked very well, because instead of me having to communicate with parents, communicate with students because homework was not done, there are always reasons why evenings are busy. And on top of that, I want to make sure that my students are doing fun activities in their lives. So when they come back to my class, they feel refreshed and ready to continue. So that is part of one of my process for this thing. And I'm quite happy and proud of them as well. So there you go. There you go. And teaching in craft and amazing. So am I giving you a whole bunch of new ideas to build resilience? I think a little bit. And the reason for that is that if you learn that you need to protect your time in class with your student, you need to protect your time at home with by yourself or with your family, your friend, even if you're going out for a walk. It's quite important, because if you don't put in place the process to take time to enjoy your life, What happens is that when there's some stressors coming in, we go to the survival mode, and then again, we go back to our old habits. However, if we have the process in place, that's always good. So here we have, so welcome. So we have here Pascalot. Good evening. We have, what are your thoughts of AI in education? I know a few places already starting to add it to classrooms, helping teachers and students organize and even create lessons, outlines, and things. Interestingly enough, I'm doing a class on communication technology, and the board has started to be more, let's say, strict with the software we can use. So earlier, when I started so in September, I organized with some AI, ChatGPT, Claude that I enjoyed at the time. I also was using some interesting website like Canva and so on. But by the time we got to October and November, the softwares were no longer being available on the school computers, on the board computers. So the AI I had installed on my computers were set aside. The some of the so when I was trying to get into website with my login with my work email, I could no longer do that. So I had to make a decision. So what I'm doing for that, I do talk about AI and how they can help students, especially with the planning. A lot of the evaluations that I do in my classes are not pen and paper. And the reason for that is it allows the students, I notice that they are, when I do evaluations, they're doing a lot more thinking when they are actually giving answers. Now, my tests, I've changed them. I no longer do as many multiple choice questions. I don't do as much asking for definitions where students can go on their on the web, for example. I give them case studies where they have to give insights from the case study, but also give their opinion based on what we've learned in class. So that has helped quite a bit. Something I didn't mention as well is that even though I'm using a learning management system in for my classes, I rarely, except for my communication class, I rarely ask my students to use their computer. So most of the time, my students are there to participate in class, to do collaboration in class, to do hands-on activity in class. Because it's too easy I don't want them to have the skill to find information with an AI. I want them to be able to think about information that is available to them. With respect to, for example, project. So that's a good question here. So sometimes students have projects and they go home, and I've seen it many times, especially with AI, where you can have AI do research for you. They can do videos and audio report for you. They can write a blog and a text for you. They can actually do a drawing. They can do art. They can do slides for you. So basically, AI can do everything for the students without them having to learn it. So what I do now, so for example, I do ask them to do a project, but then I do a lot more presentations in class. So what happens is that even if they use AI to do all their project, I ask them to present the info to me. So they spend sometimes like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 minutes, depending on the time I'm allowing them to present their point. And as soon as they presented their point, I always give them a chance to discuss about relationships from a few topics. I ask them for extension questions. I ask them for their opinion on some pieces. And the reason for that is that when a student has thought of a question in a project, did the research, put the ideas together, and organize a presentation, usually they have a lot of understanding about the topic and they can answer all my questions. But if someone has done the work through AI, which is their choice, they can present it. It's their way, but they can rarely actually answer questions. Answer questions that I have. If I ask them to find a relationship about 2 or 3 sections in their presentations. In science, if I ask them to, what would it be? To trace a graph, for example, and tell me the story about a graph, or expand on their graph. What happens is that if they've done it, they can answer the question quickly. If they cannot do so, then I notice right away. So the marks cannot be as high because of that. So some mark goes there because they have presented, but there to just to ask them to do something online and give it to me, it's tricky because you never know who has done it. So that's my trick. That's how I've done this one. In communication technology, so for that one, so we did many projects and most of it was on computer. For example, for the final project here, which will be 20% of the final mark, I'm asking them to put together a website, and the website would include all the work and the projects they've done in the past. So here it's a bit tricky because they cannot really ask someone else to do so because it's their project. So they have to do the hands-on there. And I do a lot more conferencing to help as well. There will always be people that will find shortcuts to do what they need to do. That's part of the game. I know some people, they have tutor doing the work for them. Sometimes parents do the work for them. There was a few years where I had people where it's even tutors that are abroad. So sometimes people, they have an evaluation test and so on. They ask to go to the washroom. They have their phones. They call people and they get information. So there's so much you can do on this one. However, there are always ways to play with the way you are, with the way that you are asking your questions. And it's also how you put your classes together. Because so when we do activities in class, for me, it's not just doing the activity. I'm very curious about their ideas. I'm curious about their conclusions. I'm always curious about the way they came to a conclusion. And because I'm curious and I love questions. So what happens is the students get excited for that. And as part of the chemistry of the groups, it is always so we can try to raise the awareness that way. It doesn't mean it works at 100%, but I'm very happy with how things are going as we're going along. So hopefully that answers your question. It's a very good one. It's something that we are looking at all the time. Yes. I think that's all I have to say. If you have any clarification question on this, please put them in the comments. I'm always happy to answer questions. That will bring us to the third part of this podcast, which is about the leadership's perspective about resilience. And this one is interesting, and I'm going to link it with what I talked about students, which is about building your craft as a leader. So building your craft as a leader means that you are there to guide others around you with a common vision, where you are setting processes where your teacher working for you, your team members working for you, or all the departments and teams working with you. If they know the process that you want, then it will work so much better, because when they know the process, then they're a bit more independent. It allows them to be more creative within the boundaries of their project. And I think that's how you can get the best out of people. Now, I do enjoy this idea that a leader, if they're hiring new people, should always try to hire people smarter than them. And the reason for that is that by doing that, the leader will not have other choice than actually appreciate new ideas and expansion on the vision. If you, as a leader, you always get people that are doing just what you're doing, how can your group, your team, or your company get better? So that's something to look into. And as I mentioned, leaders also get sometimes tired. Sometimes they have stressors all around them. And as others, if there are too many stressors for leaders, what happens is that you go back to your old habits because you're in a survival mode. And if you are in your survival mode, what happens? You go back to the old habits, and then sometimes your leadership style can change, and sometimes not for the best. So here, finding a way that you can appreciate your craft, finding ways that you can be with other leaders, finding ways that you can have a life outside of your group, then you can bring stories, and then everybody realizes that we are all humans aiming for the same goal, which is succeeding as part of the team, succeed as a company. So that's my perspective on this one. And it's all in this idea of building resilience. Because when we're tired, regardless if we're a student, a teacher, a parent, let's say a leader in our community or in a company, if we're tired, then it's much harder to be creative, and therefore everybody in the group feel more or less the same way. But we have to be upfront with people. It does every so often happens, and I'll conclude with that. If there's a couple days where, or if there's a day that I feel very tired, and I do everything I can with the processes to feel better, and it's a bit tough, I usually just tell my colleagues and my students saying, okay, we're going to do the best we can today. We're going to move forward, even though it's a little bit, so that they know that it's tricky days. They understand, and usually students and colleagues are always pretty good with that. If you're a person that tries to bring ideas and bring energy in a team, and there's one day it's a bit tricky for you, they'll be there for you, especially if you tell them ahead of time and you've built the relationship for your team. And that will be what my key topics will be today. And my big topics was about the resilience, because I have some students that are doing amazing right now. Some others, they're going back to the old habits where they say, oh, they have work to do, they miss class so they can make up work for other classes, and then it snowballs, and some of them are a bit struggling. We're working on that, and hopefully the message today has brought you some ideas on how to be more resilient. So I'll see if there's any questions before we end this podcast. So no questions at this time. Thank you very much for being here. I wish you an amazing day. Be resilient tomorrow, and don't forget to go outside, go for a walk, and enjoy nature. That's often one of the best way to be there. And it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much with Pascal for your question. It's been great, and have a wonderful evening. On this, take care, and I'll see you next Wednesday at 7:30, same time.